All right, so what we're going to work on today is kind of a grab bag of things. I want to write something that'll open a web server on the net and just scrape a page full of text. Also, I want to demonstrate the string builder class and maybe print writer for saving data to a file. And maybe object output stream. If I did not do that last week, I may have done that last week. Let's look at that. Did we do object output stream last week? Yeah, I did. Lecture V, object output stream. Okay, so we won't do that. But there are obviously other ways of writing data out other than object output streams. So we're on lecture X. I think we're going to get to Z, Y, and Z. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is strings. If I do this, string S is equal to, just an empty string, and then I add something to it. And then I do some other kind of operation on it. String.replace all, please replace all 1, 2, 3s with this string. And then do that again and do that again, right? Maybe I'll print it out each time so that we can see what it looks like. This is just to get something in a string so that we can talk about it, talk about what it's doing. Then I'm going to add one more string to it, S equals a question mark plus the whole thing to it. Anyways, strings are immutable, meaning that once they're allocated in memory, Java will never go in and modify that. It might release the memory that it's pointed to, but it's never going to go into the memory and insert a 4 between, insert anything between the 3 and the 4. Or it's never going to remove anything from it. If you try to remove something from it, it's going to create a brand new string, allocate that many more bytes, copy everything from the old one, plus some modifications. So when I create a string here, with some letters here, and then I say S plus equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it doesn't take this particular string and then add some more letters to it. It creates a brand new object. And by the time we're done, we have two objects, one that equaled A, B, C, D, E, F, and then another that equals A, B, C, D, E, F, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And eventually the garbage collector will come and release the memory that S, is pointing to. But doing string manipulations with immutable objects can take extra memory and they can take extra time, and it's not the most efficient way of doing it. I'm sure that there are very good reasons why Java made strings immutable, right? Why are Java strings immutable? It's the very top hit. Because string objects are cached in the string pool, hash, whatever, right? And there's got to be some reason for it. So let's go ahead and run this and make sure it's not. All right, so clearly that did not work, my replace 1, 2, 3 with this stuff. So I must not understand what the replace all is supposed to do. And of course, I don't have JavaDoc installed. Replaces each substring in this string that matches the regular expression. Oh, that's why it's regular expressions. My mistake. How about just replace then? returns a string replacing all of the old char or char sequence to the new char or char sequence. Okay, that'll work. So instead of replace all, what regular expressions are, yeah, they're worth reading about. I'm not going to talk about them right now. They're a way of specifying pattern matching, where if you want to replace everything that begins with a 1, 2, 3 and ends in a 6, 7, 8, then you might be able to specify 1, 2, 3 asterisk 6, 7, 8. Now, I'm actually pretty sure that that wouldn't work, but that's the idea, right? 1, 2, 3 asterisk 6, 7, 8. Get any string that begins with 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. Now, the syntax I just mentioned is not regular expressions. It's more DOS substitution. So I know that's not correct, but that's the idea. Just like if you open up a command prompt or Windows terminal, something like that, and you say, I want to find, everything that starts with a D, and you do D asterisk, right? That kind of thing. Anyways, let's see if it works now, if it at least does something. Aha, and you know what I'm doing wrong? Maybe it was working after all. It's not changing the string. I just told myself that, right? I said it's not changing the string, it's building a new string. So you have to store that new string into a result, right? It's creating a brand new string, and if you don't reassign it into the old string or give it into a new string, then it's gone for good. Now it's working, right? There are strings getting nice and longer. I wonder if replace all would have worked. Let's find out. I can't see any difference between the way that the two are behaving. What I ought to be able to do is to say replace all 1s, 2s, or 3s with some specific character, right? And then I'm going to replace ABC with this, and then this last one will fail because we won't have any 1s or 2s or 3s anymore. No, yeah, we will. So the 1, 2, and the 3 here got replaced with an asterisk. Interesting. Not gonna cogitate on that. I'm just gonna leave it with replace, which as far as I can tell is gonna do the exact same thing, right? Replace that 1, 2, 3 with an asterisk. All right, so it's just building a string. Don't need to belabor that. It's slow, it uses more memory. Maybe I shouldn't say it's slow, but there's a class that you can use called stringbuilder, which is recommended when you're manipulating text. So for example, what if I had some string that was 2,000 letters long and I wanted to append a period to the end of that? Well, it wouldn't append a period to it. It would create a brand new string that was 2001 letters long, right? And then store that back into my variable, and I'd still have that old 2000 variable string hanging out until the garbage collector came. So let's create a string builder. What class is it in? Java.util. Got to go before the package statement, excuse me. Or not. What am I doing wrong? Come on. I don't even know. Forget it. Okay. So string builder, string builder str equals new string builder. I didn't even have to include it. That's fascinating. I guess it's what class is it part of? Oh, it is part of java.lang. So that's why I didn't have to add an import for it. All right, now let's play with it. When you create it, you can pass in some text if you want, right? Like that. And then if I want to print that out, slow down, system.out.println str, right? It's going to print out hello, of course, because we're sure that string builder has a toString method that'll convert it into a nice little string for printing purposes. And so it prints hello. Well, what kind of methods do we have? str dot append. We can append something to it like that. That does not erase the old string. It modifies the memory containing the old string to have some new data added to it. I didn't print it out, but of course it would work. And so on. Great many other string manipulation methods, the kinds that you would accept so that you can get a substring of it. Capacity. So we can get a specific character out of it, so we can compare it to another string, so we can delete part of it, and the end of it we want to delete characters 3 through 7 inside of it or something like that. String.delete, and I want to delete characters 3 through 8, whatever. That'll get rid of index positions 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 out of it. Let's put something into it that's easier to see than just hello, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, so that we can watch what gets deleted. Of course, I need to print it out afterwards. And there we go, right? It deleted it. A, B, C, the D is gone because that's position 3, all the way up to the H, right? So got 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And I said 3, 8, so it did one of those up to and not including things. Okay. If we wrote something to time appending data to a string as opposed to appending data to a string builder, we would find out that the string builder is faster. And we would just know, we would get satisfaction in knowing that it's managing memory far more efficiently to do that. So I don't know, it could be that we should introduce string builder right from the get-go and just recommend using it. But for the most part, people just regularly go ahead and use strings. And I'm sure that there's no real problem doing so. But if you're doing a lot of string manipulation in your program, then you would want to switch over to using string builder. And by lot, I mean like if you're reading in a file and reading in big chunks of text and then searching and replacing inside that chunk of text and so on. There's also something called a string buffer, and I don't even know what that does, honestly. And that's too bad because the next example I type may have a string buffer in it. Let's look at see what it does. It's a pure class of string that provides much of the functionality of strings. String buffer represents growable and writer character sequences. You can have stuff inserted in the middle or the end. It'll automatically grow, kind of like the difference between an array and array list, it looks like. So what's the difference between string buffer and string builder? The main difference between string buffer and string builder is that string builder is not thread safe. Alrighty, that would be a problem, right? Just the last lecture that I posted talks about threads. And if you have multiple things accessing, the same memory, if it's not thread safe, you can have two things that are actually simultaneously modifying the data, corrupting the string or whatever you're trying to get a hold of. So string builder is fast because it's not thread safe. Now, this is not a multi-threaded application, so I could go ahead and keep using string builder. However, string buffer has synchronized access to it, meaning that if multiple threads are trying to access it, only one of them get to change it at a time. Come on. All right, I see chat messages, and I'm sorry that I don't normally catch them. Ah. Okay. That's correct. That's what we've typed. That's awesome, gang. Well, this apparently is never going to load. So string buffer versus string builder. They're both mutable. One is not thread safe. The other one is the expense of being thread safe is that string buffer is very slow while string builder is fast. Alrighty. So I'm not going to play with string buffer. So now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk just for a moment about writing something to a file, writing text to a file using something called the print writer. So what we're going to do is let me get my example in front of me so I'm not just totally winging it. So I'm going to make a file. Specify a path to it. I'm just going to write a test about a lecture x.txt file come out of it. Add an import for it. Now, this doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't do any file I/O, which is why you don't need an exception handler to do it. It just creates an object that has a path specified in it that you could then do things with. So like if I type file dot, I could create a temp file. That's an interesting thought. Anyways, let's go ahead and create our print writer now based on that file. So print writer pw equals new print writer based on that file. That is file IO. So it wants, well, firstly, it wants me to add the import for it. And then it wants me to add exception handling for it. Surround the statement with try catch. If I get to here, this line right here, then that means that it successfully created the print writer. Now, when you're doing file handling, exception handling, it may be tempting to try to do one thing here and then try to handle the error and maybe return if the error didn't work and then try the next thing here. The other tempting thing to do is because that's actually fairly complex and difficult to manage, just to close the entire code block in one try catch. And that's what I tend to demonstrate. So if I do pw dot, and what do we got here? Look at these old favorites, print, printf, print line. So saving something to a file, like that string I built, is that easy, right? You create your file, you create your print writer based on it, and you send it out like that. And then when you're done with it, you close your print writer, pw.close. If you really feel like it, you could close your file handle as well, but there's really no reason to do that because the garbage collector will clean it up. Doesn't hurt anything to leave it out, just like it doesn't usually hurt anything to leave any other kind of object out. But a file something that has an active connection to the operating system, like a print writer, or if you've got a scanner reading from a file, you definitely want to close as soon as possible. So if I run this, it's going to create that file. Now, I didn't have it print a message saying that it saved it, right? System.out.println, data saved to. I wonder if we can get the file name back out of the file, right? If I do plus and then I do file, or excuse me, f dot, can I get the path? Yeah, let's do what get path does. Or even get absolute path. I wonder what that is. Let's take a look at that. So data saved to, and there's the path that it saved my file to. Now, as you can imagine, you can specify your own absolute path, right? You can use your slashes and save it to somewhere else. Like if I just wanted to save it to desktop rather than all these subdirectories. And the reason it looks like this is because I'm using, you know, a Mac, kind of a BSD Linux kind of thing. I should not have said BSD Linux, a BSD Unix kind of thing. It's based on the Unix architecture, so it doesn't have drive letters. That's the only difference there. But like if I wanted to specify that as part of my path, I could do that. I could just check that on there and hit that. And then when it writes it, right, it's going to open that path in the desktop. If I come over here and look, sure enough, it saved it to the desktop. If I go and find my desktop, then it should be up there at the top. It should be up there at the top. There it is. Right. And there's my file. So maybe we want to get some data from the internet and write it to a file. Yeah, there's a couple of ways, just like there's more than one way of saving data to a file. This is just a pure and simple text file, because if I wanted to open it back up and read it in, I could do that. And there's all sorts of ways of doing it. Perhaps the easiest is just to use the scanner, right? Because we already know how to use a scanner. I believe the syntax is just going to be this: use the same file path. I might even be able to use the same object, but I'm not going to, just because I've never tried that. Right, so that's my new path. And then I'm going to do, you know, I need to create a scanner. Scanner sc equals new scanner, but I'm not doing system.io. I'm doing that file handle. Add an import for it. It didn't like that. And since this is file IO, guess what I got to do? I got to put it inside, you know. What did I just do? I chose the wrong thing. I think I told it to make main throw the error, which is not the right way to handle exceptions, because it goes ahead and lets the program crash, and I don't want to let the program crash. Instead, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do that again, but enclose it with a try catch. All right, if I get here, that means that it worked successfully. Let's put some spaces in our data that we were writing out, right? It had some, right? Whatever. Now we've got some numbers. Let's read them in. While sc.has next, let's read that string in. String s equals sc.next. Let's try to convert it to a number. How about using double.parse double? What you complaining about? Oh yeah, I guess you're right. Variable s is already declined. Okay. How about s data? So double data equals double.parse double s data, right? And then we could just print it out. System.out.println red in quote plus data. Now this line could conceivably crash, right? So we might either want to use has next double to make sure that it's a double, or we might want to put this in a try catch block of its own in order to handle the fact that it could crash. Well, let's see if it actually works. I don't think there's any non-numeric data in it. And let's go ahead and close our scanner, sc.close, which we never do when we're reading from the keyboard. But now we're doing file I/O, so we want to close it as soon as possible. What are you complaining about now? Convert to try-catch with resources. This is an interesting one. It's a different syntax. Please try to create this variable. That's what it's doing. And then it closes the variable automatically when it falls out of scope. Calls the close method on it automatically when it falls out of scope. I'm sure that I could have done the same thing right here. Convert to try with resources. Now I have two different try blocks, and that looks kind of stupid. But I could fix that, right? I could grab that, and I could put parentheses here. I could paste that there. There, that works, right? So please try to create this variable that could create an exception while being instantiated. And then please use that variable. And then when it falls out of scope, it's going to call PW close. This is going to do the same thing. Please create this scanner based on that file variable. Let's see if it works. System.out.println parentheses quote done reading from end quote plus file dot f2 dot get absolute path. Just so we get a warm fuzzy reading from it. Ooh, and did it blow up? Number format exception. I read something and haha. All right, I guess what I'm going to do is put another loop in here while sc.has next double parentheses in parentheses equals false, then sc.next. That may be a stupid way of doing it. I should check to see. I'm just going to better enclose this in my own try-catch block. So what's the exception being thrown? Number format exception. So try this, please. And here's what we're going to try. We're going to try that, and then we're going to catch that exception. Catch exception. Well, what kind of exception, though? What I just copied. Number format exception EX. I'm just going to, may not even print an error message, or just print system.out.println red, you know, not a number, end quote, plus S data. Just because we're curious what we read, that's not data. That's not numeric data. At least I am. Guess I could have opened the file and found out. All right, so yeah, there was some text data in there as well that it could not convert, right? And then we read in these numbers. There's more than one way from reading from a text file, but since the scanner is available to us and we know how to use the scanner already, based on our prior 2 semesters worth of experience, then it's not a bad way to do it at all. Just like print writer, right? It let us use printf and println and those kind of things. Where's our print writer? Let's look at some of the other methods available to a print writer. pw dot check error. What's that do? Flushes the stream if it's not closed and checks its error state. Whole bunch of versions. Write. What's the difference between write and print? writes a string, cannot be inherited from the writer class because it suppresses IO exceptions. Well, let's Google up print writer, write versus print. Ooh, Stack Overflow, they always have the answers. Let's go look. Printf formats the output while write just prints the characters it is given. Printf handles many argument types, converting them into strings, while write just handles single characters and arrays of characters and strings. So the data being converted. To illustrate the difference, write int interprets the argument as a single character to be printed, an ASCII character probably, while print int converts that integer into a character string. So write 49, since the ASCII value of 1 is 49, would write an I, while print 49 prints 49 to the string. Okay, good to know. I'm going to stick with print because I already know how to use it. Any questions so far? Or do I need to scroll up or down, or do you need to share your screen so I can help find a syntax error or anything like that? We all good to go?
Good.
All righty. Okay, so next, let's read some data from a web page. And again, there's always more than one way. There's something called the HTTP client, and there's something called OpenStream. And I don't know an advantage to doing one over the other. In the past, I think I've demonstrated HTTP client just because it had the cool word HTTP in it, right? So the example that I'm looking at right now, because I've lost my old example, shows the prior one, OpenStream, to be a little bit shorter. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Okay, so I'm going to need an import called net.url, and the URL in that is caps. So import java.net.url like that. Tempted to just do that, right? Now, why did java.util? Anyways, I don't know. So I'm going to come down here. Now, we're going to create our URL just like we created our file object up here. We're going to create our URL object. So URL, and I'm just going to call it URL, right? Equals new URL, and we need a path for it. Oh, heck, let's declare the path as a variable. What am I going to open up? Google rose.edu https://rose.edu. I'm curious as to whether it'll do the secure sockets just fine for the HTTPS. We'll find out. Okay, and so the path that I'm trying to open is that S path. And I'm getting errors. Add a throw clause or try catch. Well, I guess we will put everything inside a try catch. So surround that statement in a try catch. What can we do with a URL? URL dot get file, get path. The file name of this URL is the very last portion of it. I don't see, like if we have index.html, if I go out to rose.edu/index.html, What do you know? It doesn't get it. Usually index.html and just nothing are mapped to be the same thing. Back in olden days, back when you really were retrieving files from other servers, then you always just defaulted to trying to open index.html. And then they made it so that not specifying a file name at all would map itself to opening index.html. And now it looks like, at least at Rose, if you try to deliberately open index.html, it fails. But Google works. Oh, cute. Look at that. Alrighty. Anyways, so if this was google.com/indexhtml, if we called url.getFile, it would probably return that index.html. I don't even see a file name in this path. I don't know what it would return. And let's just keep going. So I'm going to create a scanner that'll open that. But I'm going to create a stream from it. So url.openStream. And what does that return? So input stream space open stream equals, or I could just call it, stream like that, equals URL open stream. And it's going to tell me that this could throw an exception that I better handle. So I'm going to add a catch clause for whatever exception that is. So far, we've had to handle malformed URL exception and IO exception. That's a common one, right? I'm surprised we didn't have to do that up here when we were reading from it. I'm quite surprised we didn't have to do that. How about when we were writing to it? You're kidding. All right, well, but we got to do it now. So now we have created our input stream, and we can use that to create our scanner, right? Scanner sc equals new scanner based on the input stream. And like I said before, we know how to use scanners. Let's read the entire file in and build one big stream at it. So I'm going to create a string called data. I could use a string builder. Wouldn't that be awesome? I don't see much call to do that. But what if it's a huge file? It might really be a good idea to do that. Let's be clever and use our newfound knowledge. String buffer SB equals new string buffer. I hope I didn't call the prior one SB already. I guess it would tell me if I had an error. Now we're going to have a while loop. While has next line. We're going to read that line in. So while sc dot has next line, parentheses and parentheses, get that data in. Sc dot append. No, string buffer dot append. SB dot append, parentheses, sc dot next line, right? Get that string and append it to our string buffer. And then let's print our results. System.out.println. I wonder what he's complaining about. String buffer can be replaced with string builder. Yeah, and it's faster. And this is a single threaded app, so why not use string builder instead? Okay, so string builder SB is equal to new string builder. Anyway, system.out.println read from end quote plus spath.get. I'm sorry, url.get. Get path. Semicolon. And then let's print the data that we actually wrote out. I wonder how many characters long is it? Can we figure that out? Int length is equal to sb dot length. That looks cool. So why don't we tack that on, right? So plus quote a space, quote space quote plus SB dot length, parentheses in parentheses, plus, whoopsie, get back up there, quote space bytes, end quote, or characters, right? Characters are not the exact same things as bytes. There we go. And then I just deleted that other one. And I guess, I don't know this for sure, but maybe URLs or input streams or scanners should be closed when they're talking to the internet, just like files. Can't hurt, right? Okay. Convert to try with resources. Well, if I do that, it's going to do all that to it. I think I won't. I think I'm going to leave it the way it was. Let's give it a shot. Done reading from, it doesn't have the path, but it said that it read 48,000 characters. Well, I don't know what's wrong. Maybe I could use get host instead. URL.getHost, get host, right? Let's see if that prints something more interesting than what it said. Yeah, read from rows.edu, 48,000 characters. Let's find out what we got, right? So system.out.print, parentheses, SB, no, quotes, SB. There we go. Get all of our string data out. And it's long. Real long. Incredibly long. What could we do about that? We could look for a closing thingy, right? Closing brace, and then print everything up to that closing brace. And then keep doing that. Let's see if we can do that. This code is going to be interesting enough that it probably should go in its own function. So let's just call it print tags. And we're going to pass sb.toString, parentheses in parentheses, like that to it. Now let's go and write a print tags method. Now let's actually pass it in as a string builder, because it's got those cool functions and it can modify the behavior, right? We could, I'm waffling on it. I'm gonna convert it to a string. Okay, so come down here. This is the end of main. Public static void print tags string builder SB. So what I'm thinking is, if we find a greater than, then we want to print everything up to that data. So while SB dot index of parentheses quote greater than end quote, then let's get the index of that position, right? Int I is equal to, tell you what, our first starting position is going to be 0, right? And then the end of the text that we want to print, we don't know yet. So the end of the text that we print at is going to be end is equal to sb.index of, and find that thing. And then let's extract that string, right? So sb dot, how do you get the string out of it? It's called substring. Substring, right? So what are we going to print? System.out.println sb.substring, starting at the start and going to the end, that position we just found. And this should have been greater than or equal to 0 right there. Right, I just had to change that. Now we need to update our new start and end. Start is equal to end plus 1. We want to start after that angle that we just found. And I actually think that this is going to print up to, but not including that. That may be the case. We may see a whole bunch of things that are missing their greater than at the end of the tags. Or we may not get anything at all. What have I done here? Incompatible types. String cannot be converted to string builder. I think I said I was going to convert it to a string, and then I wrote it to take a string builder anyways. And we could make it work either way, right? If I wanted that to work, then I could make it take a string as its data, string S, and then my first line of code could be string builder, SB equals new string builder based on that string, right? Might be worth it if this thing was several, kilobytes or several hundred kilobytes long to do all of our manipulations on a string builder. Well, now what are you complaining about? Replace with string? Oh, no thanks. All right, okay, there we go. All right, we got an exception. End string index out of bounds. Started at 15, end at 14. What did I do there? Because when I was looking for the index of that, I didn't specify a starting position for my index. Index of takes 1 or 2 parameters. It takes a starting position so that you're not always just starting at 0. So I need to add a comma start to that. So I now had to make 2 changes that line. And yet again, now what have I done? It's turning into more trouble than it's worth, and I apologize for that. Check range. Oh, because I forgot to modify the second index of. That one. Brilliant. I almost feel like making this have a priming read. What do I mean by that? This is going to completely ignore printing a string if the file, if we get something back with no tags. What do I mean by that? If there are no tags in it, and that's impossible for HTML, but if there were no tags in it, then there's not going to be a greater than sign, and so there's nothing else to print. So forgive me for restructuring this a little bit. I'm going to say that the end is equal to this. I'm going to copy this line, paste this here, and also paste it here. You see what I did? I moved that index of to here, and I'm just going to make this say while end is greater than or equal to 0. And the reason I'm doing it that way is so that I could just come down here and do else and just print whatever we were given, right? Well, that's not going to work. Forget it. I'm not going to handle the fact that if there's no tags in it, we won't print any data. I could just document that, right? Warning, doesn't print anything if no tags. And it's working. I see stuff. As I predicted, it's not getting the closing brace. How do we fix that? Well, the problem is just here in substring. When you do substring, it means here's your starting position and here's one past your ending position. So we'll just do that. Or I could modify the value of end here and then just use end and end here. I'm okay with leaving it the way it is. And there it goes, right? You see, it's kind of funny. It actually hangs for a minute while it accesses the internet. If you run it, if it's running on yours, or if you can see on my screen, it pauses there after it says done reading, right? After we've saved reading from the file, internet access is slow. It's astronomically slow compared to anything else you can do on your computer. It's like file I/O is, 1,000 times or 100,000 times slower than any computations you can do. And then accessing the internet is 1,000 times slower than that. It's fraught with peril, right? That's how come you have to include all the exception handling in it. This internet may be down, or the server might not be responding, or whatever. All righty. What if we only wanted to print out the text? We could look for tags that begin with angle P, right? Because those are the only things that are really text. See if that's true. If I can do a Control F and look for P. Let's do that. Let's print out only the ones I have. Nah, let's not. Let's leave it alone, because then that would only print out the tags themselves and not the text that was enclosed by the tags. All right. I think we've seen a lot of useful stuff in this one. What did we learn from here? We learned how to use string builder, and honestly, string buffer is just about the same. String buffer, which is slower but thread safe. We demonstrated using scanner with print writer and file for writing and reading text, and demonstrated using usering, for Pete's sake, using scanner with URL to read from the net. And when we did just a little bit of string manipulation functions here. And honestly, since we weren't modifying the string, we could have just left it a string. If I took this out and replaced it just with string SB equals S, the code would all still work, because it's still got all these methods, right? Index of and substring, stuff like that. Now that I think about it, there was no reason to use string builder. I was thinking at first that I was actually going to delete stuff from it and be modifying the string that way as we went through it, but then I just used the search functions to go through it. And why not leave it the way it was, right? Works that way. Now what are you wanting? Replaced by string? Yeah, I've already established that would work. No reason to worry about it. Okay, so the other way of doing it is HTTP client, and it's far more complicated to use. Yeah, I'm just going to Google it up. HTTP client.execute example. How about like a tutorials point? Or tutorials are usually pretty easy to understand. Well, that's not finding it. How to read the contents of a web page do a string in Java. Okay. So here we go. What do you got to do? Well, that's a string buffer example. HTTP client. Create a client. Create defaults. Create a getter with our URL. Create a response that executes a command feeding it that get. Create a scanner that gets that response, calls get entity on it, and then calls get content. And what do you know? An instantiate a string buffer class to hold the result while it's got any data, get the data, and append it. That looks oddly like what I did, doesn't it? And then retrieve the string and do something with it, right? Replace all of these things with null so that it would strip out all of the special tags. But anyways, okay, so you can see what I mean? We were able to do all of this stuff with this code right here. So I don't know the advantage of doing it the other way. I'm sure that it's more customizable perhaps, but anyways. All right, I can't think of anywhere else to take this. I'm thinking about ending early and then thinking about asking if any of y'all want to hang out in Zoom and show me your projects if you have any questions over it. And otherwise, we will just end for the day. So speaking of which, do we have any questions? Let me go make the Dropbox for this. Please tell me I started the recording. I've done an hour and a half lecture.
It says recording on the top left.
Yeah, good. Because I certainly did.